give himself an off-ramp, right? Like on Friday, Callan Levitt said, the president will decide when they've unconditionally surrendered, regardless of what Iran says. It is now becoming apparent that, in fact, Iran is going to dictate when this ends.
Yeah. Sam, let's start with this war in Iran. This war is very unpopular. This war and support for Israel is very unpopular. Supporting AIPAC now is unpopular. Sam, can you please explain why the Democratic establishment refuses to meet its own base when it comes to support for this war and support for AIPAC in Israel?
Because they disagree with us. I mean, that's ultimately it comes down. Like, just about 20 minutes ago, it was reported that there are reports now that Iran is mining the Straits of Hormuz. And I spoke today on the program with Professor Juan Cole, and this has become sort of clear over the past couple of days. I mean, aside from the fact that there's a whole host of reasons not to support a war, period, and particularly a war with Iran, moral, material, etc. But this was so stupid. I mean, clearly the Trump administration had no idea what they were doing, and we're now at the point where, as much as Trump has been trying to sort of over the past couple of days, I'm sure you've seen it, like, give himself an off-ramp, right? Like on Friday, Callan Levitt said, the president will decide when they've unconditionally surrendered, regardless of what Iran says. It is now becoming apparent that, in fact, Iran is going to dictate when this ends.
Yeah.
It is incumbent upon them to punish the United States and Israel and the world as much as they can so that this doesn't happen to them again, because, of course, they don't have a nuclear weapon, so they have no deterrent capacity in that regard. But this is one of those situations where, like, you you stick a stick in a hornet's nest, and they're going to come and bite you in such a way that you're not going to go by that hornet's nest again. And that we appear, I think this week is when we're starting to move into that phase of realization. If Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries had, from the very beginning, said no war in Iran, which is exactly what they did not say. Even yesterday, what they said originally was like, you're not coming to Congress. We don't know the justification. You have got a lot of explaining to do to the American public. Yesterday, on the floor of the House, the Senate rather, Chuck Schumer was saying, maybe it was this morning actually, he's like, they're all over the map. There's a lot of contradictions. Last night, Trump says the war is going to end, and 12 hours later, Hegseth says, no, it's just beginning. Which one is it? And, that is a relevant thing for someone like you or I to say, who are doing sort of like commentary, right? Like we're analyzing these things. And it's a second order issue. The first order issue is no war. You don't have a right. This is illegal. This is stupid. There's no purpose for it. It's a war of choice. End this war now. But Chuck Schumer has, for certainly the time that he has been majority leader, but really throughout his career, has articulated multiple occasions that his job, he sees it as Senate Majority Leader, he mistakenly said the other day, but also Senate Minority Leader, is to protect Israel.
Said it first week of February, Sam.
He says it all the time. And he is also one of the few Democrats who voted against the Iran nuke deal under Obama years ago, because he does not want...
That's Schumer right now.
That's Schumer. Give me give
Sam,
me
this
1
is
second.
Sam, this is not fair, Sam.
He's he's mad at me, but I'll get it later. The I mean, so the reason why, and just again, there's many reasons to be against this war, but from a sheer political standpoint, Donald Trump, the Republicans are going to lose the House. I mean, I think that in this, assuming that all of the things that Trump is going to be doing between now and the election don't inhibit the ability for people to vote, he's going to lose the House. There's an opportunity to win the Senate, but what we're going to go through in this country when the oil shocks start to hit, and they're going to hit,
Absolutely.
we're going to have serious problems in terms of gasoline prices, maybe even gasoline availability. We're going to have serious problems in terms of food prices because a huge component of the world's fertilizer comes out of the Strait of Hormuz. And this country, over the course of the summer in particular, it's probably going to take about, it's going to, well, you're already seeing gas prices already shoot through the roof, but it's going to get more aggressive because Iran is going to make sure that we American citizens feel like they don't need to come here and bomb us.
No, they're going to
They,
gouge us.
they're going to gouge us. They're going to make us pay an economic price. And imagine a world where the Democratic leadership from day one was saying, don't do this. Do not do this. The Republicans, every one of those, imagine if Hakeem Jeffries had said, I'm going to whip this vote and I'm not going to allow for backbenching Democrats to go and vote against the Democratic Party for the War Powers Act. I mean, imagine if Chuck Schumer was one of the 5 senators now who are basically saying, we're going to stop everything in the Senate to have hearings and call Republicans I mean, we have a Senate leader who is a drag on everything the Democratic Party is trying to do right now. And that is just, it's almost incomprehensible. I mean, never mind a guy who's ineffectual. He is literally working against the best interests of the Democratic Party right now.
And I'm so glad you mentioned it because I was I was very vigilant in looking at the initial responses of Jeffries and Schumer 10 days ago, because I was paying attention, Sam, to the fact that reporting suggested that Democratic leadership was working behind the scenes to actually kill Massey and
Yes.
Khanna's war powers resolution. I know there's a lot of news, folks, so let me just remind you, always try to bring the receipts, that literally a few days before the war, Massey and Khanna seeing the buildup, seeing the rah rah rah, fearing the fact that United States would join Israel in this disastrous war, they were trying to pass a resolution that would have every single elected official publicly vote whether or not they supported this war. So I would think, looking at the data, looking at your base, looking at the polls, the fact that the only thing that is more, I don't know, unpopular right now than this war is essentially what's tied. It's the Americans want. There's 3 things that Americans agree on right now, Sam. About 70 to 80% of Americans. They're against this war. They're against AI data centers in their backyard. And also they want the release of the Epstein files. So you look into that data and you're looking at the fact that your base is moving away from AIPAC and Netanyahu and Israel. And internally the data shows that genocide in Gaza was the main reason, not the only reason, the main reason why Democrats stayed home. So what they did, folks, was, according to credible reporting, Jeffries and Schumer worked behind the scenes to kill that vote, right? And then you saw Donald Trump make the announcement, imminent threat, I had to strike. You saw, Tim Kaine came out, gave a very good response. You got Van Hollen, you got other people saying this is illegal, this is a wrong war. I read Jeffries and Schumer's response. None of that language is there, Sam.
None.
Even now, 10 days later, none
None.
of that language is
None.
there. It's all about Khamenei was terrible and he was bad. I'm like, yeah. So what it seemed to me, Sam, was they said, how come you didn't include us, man?
100%. I mean, Schumer knows this is Schumer thinking he is playing some type of multidimensional chess. He is getting his cake, he thinks, and eating it too. But the fact of the matter, because he wanted this attack on Iran. I mean, he wanted it. There's no doubt about it. He knows he can't come out and say that explicitly, but who does he think he's fooling? We all can assess now, like, what it means to complain about process versus what you're actually doing. And he's not fooling anybody. Everybody can see this, and it's costing. It is there is a obvious opportunity, and it could very well be the absence of that, in his sort of literally being a drag on the Democratic chances to take over the Senate. I mean, the guy is both inept and I'm seeing in the comments like he's being paid. No, this is what he believes.
This is
I mean,
who
I
he
think
is.
it's just like
This is who he is.
we can do him the grace of like this is his ideology, and it is a decrepit one, and it is one and here's the other thing. Harry Reid, I'm sure you remember
Yep.
the last
You've had it.
Senate leader we had in the Democratic Party. Harry Reid, from Nevada, Mormon. Um, he did not. He did not believe in abortion. Um, he subsumed those things for the greater good of the Democratic Party. He personally had personal feelings about abortion. And frankly, like, I am perfectly fine with someone having some religious convictions that they say for their world of religion and don't impose on the public. And for him, Social Security was a major component, and this guy was a fighter. And Chuck Schumer is, multiple occasions saying that my job is either to make sure that the left is supportive of Israel or make sure that Israel gets everything it needs. And the fact of the matter is now it's actually in direct contradiction and in direct opposition to the best interests of the Democratic Party. And look, I'm not I'm not, I don't identify as a Democrat in the sense that like, this allegiance is so relevant to me. It is a vehicle to get policies like the ones we've seen in the past, frankly, from the Democratic Party, FDR and whatnot, to get these back into our society. And his work is cutting against all of it. He is ineffective in certain instances, but then in some instances, literally just like a ballast against the Democrats moving forward. I mean, it's shocking.
But this is why so that was a great rundown of Schumer. And to me, maybe this is what the Democratic leadership wants the Democratic Party to be. Because based on what you just said, talking about Schumer and even Jeffries, right? The fact that they're still taking money from APAC, bundling money from APAC, laundering it against progressive candidates. I'm sure you saw that clip with me
Yeah.
and Jeffries on APAC and also ICE. Right now, folks, as of last week, 50%. This is without Democratic leadership messaging. 50% of Americans are for abolish ICE. Imagine if they actually led. I guarantee you that number would be 60%. But maybe, Sam, this is who the Democratic leadership wants the Democrats to be, in the
Oh,
sense that what I kept saying is, and tell me if I'm being too harsh. I've never seen a political leadership, I'm not saying all Democrats, folks, hold their base with more contempt that this current leadership seems to hold their base with contempt. They use liberal and progressive as a pejorative. They use leftist as a pejorative. They're misaligned with their base when it comes to APAC, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the war, when it comes to corporate money, when it comes to AI. And then when we say change, they say shut up, shut your mouth. And then they go out of their way to throw the Mamdanis under the bus, the Ilhan Omars under the bus. So with leadership like this, how can the Democratic Party move forward? Because, like you said, it's almost like deliberately they're weighing the party down. I mean, just look at what they did with Mamdani. They went all out against Mamdani for Cuomo. And even
Chuck
now, they still haven't
Schumer,
embraced
Chuck
Mamdani.
Schumer, to my knowledge, still has not endorsed Mamdani. He didn't endorse him when he was the Democratic nominee. He certainly didn't vote for him. And I mean, look, there has always been a hostility by Democratic leadership to the base. Obama, who mobilized people in a way that we hadn't seen in ages, his campaign, when he got the nomination, his campaign basically told all outside groups, or told all donors, you don't give to outside groups, you give to only us. He took Obama for America, which was this massive sort of like grassroots organization, and essentially defanged it so that these grassroots networking could not in any way organize against whatever he was doing. Rahm Emanuel, his chief of staff, was famous for saying "f the left." I mean, they are effing our words. I mean, he was quite vocal in his hostility towards the base. And this supposedly was going to give Obama room. And in 2010, in the run up to the 2010 midterms, Obama said, I got you. And the Democrats got completely wiped out. And we lost 1,000
I remember.
state wide offices during the years of the Obama administration because Obama worked for Obama, but he did not build a party. They were not listening to anything that was happening on the ground. And so, we went through the wilderness for about 4, 5, 6 years. Where's the candidates for governor in the state? Well, it's because the Secretary of State lost under Obama, or, some town councilman left politics, or, some state senator. So there's always been this hostility. But let's be clear. We're not just talking about the base now. Okay? Like, they can make an argument that the base doesn't know. Listen, the groups, we shouldn't listen to the groups. They're making us choose unpopular positions, et cetera, et cetera. This war is already less popular than Iraq ever was. Ever, ever. And just on its beginning, that's before a single U.S. serviceman dies. That's before oil shoots up to, $5 a gallon at the gas stations. That's before there's any problems in regards to food supplies, et cetera, et cetera. This is a no-brainer from a political standpoint, just an absolute no-brainer. The Gaza stuff, look, it was apparent there was going to be first order effects to Gaza from the voting standpoint, and the Harris campaign, and you may have had the same experience. The people I knew who run advocacy organizations, who run organizations that support Democrats, that get out the vote, they were all telling me the same thing, that their people are going to vote for Harris, but they became so demoralized
Yeah.
that the idea that they're going to knock on, I'm doing an extra 100 door knocks today. It
Nope.
was not happening. And the Harris people, it was reported, they were getting their feedback. If you go out, if you've ever done canvassing, for your audience, if you've ever done canvassing, you get uh, they'll have various different softwares that work depending on the candidate, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll ask you for feedback. Part of the reason actually why Hillary Clinton lost was that they didn't have enough people to canvass, and they assumed they went by algorithmic models, and they were so wrong. They ended up on Get Out the Vote in the days leading up to the election. In places like Pennsylvania, they're knocking on 1 out of every 4 door they're knocking on is a Trump voter. And that's not what you're supposed to be doing that last week. That last week, you're supposed to be knocking on 98% of the doors you're knocking on are your voters. Well, Harris, when her campaign was getting feedback, I knocked on this door. Their number one issue is Gaza. They stopped recording it. They said, we no longer are going to accept that as an option in terms of feedback because they didn't want to know. And the Democratic Party, I mean, you saw it, Gavin Newsom went from 3 months ago, asked a question about AIPAC and implied, I think it was Van Lathan, implied like, "Are you being anti-Semitic?" To just the other day with the Pod Save guys, he's like, "Oh, it's definitely an apartheid
Yeah.
state." I mean, that's a function of Gavin Newsom. People can make their own assessments about whether they can trust a guy like that. But the point being is
I
that,
will say no from California. No.
well, I will say from New York also no, but we'll have plenty of time to litigate that. But the point being that this guy who is only going to align and take the safest positions he can take already sees the writing on the wall. The problem is that Chuck Schumer, I think. I mean, did you ever see that movie Bullworth?
Yes, I remember,
Okay,
Halle
this is a
Berry
reverse
and,
Bullworth.
Warren Beatty.
Yes, this is a reverse Bullworth. I think Chuck Schumer knows that he's not going to run for reelection in 2028. And I think that when, regardless of who wins the Senate races, more than likely, every one of those Senate wins that are going to come in that were contested are people that Chuck Schumer did not choose, right? Like Haley Stevens was his candidate in Michigan. She's not going to win. I hope
Really?
that
You
it's
don't think she's gonna win?
no, I hope that it's Abdul Al Sayed, but
Might be
it may
McMorrow.
be Malin McMurrow, but they were not chosen. In Maine, it's going to be Plattner. The polls, I mean, it's like it's over, and these people are not going to be supportive of Schumer, and Schumer's going to basically say, "Let me be majority leader, and I'm going to retire in 2 years. Let me be majority leader to then." I mean, this is a reverse Bullworth. He doesn't care. He
That's the thing, but they know he doesn't care. They know he's an albatross. They know he's sinking the party. They know he's killing momentum. Yet still they have him. And I would say
But
Jeffrey.
the problem here's the problem.
I say both.
Who's going to run? Like who in the Senate? It feels like there's nobody who wants that job right now, and that's a problem.
Because the Democratic folks, if you haven't been following the Democratic DNC and the Democratic Party's favorability is the only thing that's lower. NBC did a poll. The only thing that's lower than the Democratic Party's favorability rating is support for this war.
Yep.
It's toxic, which then goes. So, Sam, you're seeing this, right? The Democratic Party is losing its base. I'm sure you saw the Axios reporting that came out 2 days ago that Ken Martin is almost on the outs, that they're running out of money, that he went back against the base and said he was going to release the audit, but they didn't release the audit. Now, the strategy is okay. We are winning despite all of this. Why? Because people hate this mother effer Trump. He's radicalized the Latino base. He's radicalized young voters. He's radicalized independents. So I'm sure you've seen the crypt keeper, James Carville, give the advice, play possum. Just stay quiet. Give the white knight, Gavin Newsom. Do not promise people anything on transformation. Don't take a risk. Prevent defense. Say nothing on ICE. Say nothing on APAC. Say give them nothing on housing. Give them nothing on healthcare. And then we'll just waltz our way and we'll win. We're winning all these elections anyway. So don't promise anything, Sam. Don't be bold. And inshallah, we'll win. Now, my fear is this. Suppose we have free and fair elections. Suppose it's an inshallah. They'll win. But if they still have the politics of old, which is the same politics that I've had for the past 10 years, vote for us, we're not Trump, then you have not just transformation, you have restoration. And you have restoration as everything is going worse. They're all taking money from Palantir, the Broligarchy. I'm sure we've talked about on the left hook, Sherry Bustos, the XD Triple C Democrat who is collecting money from
Crypto.
Oracle and OpenAI. They're paying both sides. You see the right wing, Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, be more progressive against AI than Democrats. You're seeing them say business as usual, take money from APAC, rein in ICE, not abolish ICE. My fear, Sam, is if we've done the same thing for 10 years, it has failed. I would say it failed in 2016. I would say the only reason Biden won in 2022 was because of a 2020, excuse me, was a once in a lifetime pandemic. It failed in 2024. I think the only reason they're winning right now is because things are so bad. I fear that if they put this white knight, Gavin Newsom, who pledges restoration, I fear we're going to get our first Nazi president in 2032. Because I'm sure
The,
you've seen the polls. The youth, folks, the present and future of the GOP is Nazi. All the polls show it. They're Nazi.
I think you're absolutely right, and I would go even further. First off, I would say in terms of James Carville, if it was for James, if we followed James Carville's advice, then Wisconsin Wisconsin has another Supreme Court election on April 7th.
Yep.
And it has the ability to have they don't have Democrat Republicans, but have a sort of like liberal majority for an extended period of time, maybe a decade, I think it is at that point. There was a swing election last April. And if we had listened to James Carville, that election would have never swung to Democrats or to the liberal candidate, and Wisconsin would be in a terrible shape right now. Carville had said basically, "Don't engage in that. Don't pay attention. Don't fight anything." I mean, and then here's the second part that people should understand: how you win is um, is almost as important as winning, because you are creating a constituency that will, politicians, we like to think that politicians lie all the time, but and they never do what they say. But the fact is that more often than not, politicians actually do what they say. And that is why what your constituency asks of a politician before they get elected is so important. And it's also why guys like Carvel don't want that to be the case. I mean, we saw this in 2016. People can go back and remember this. If you go back and remember the months between the convention when Donald Trump was nominated and the election day, Democrats, the most effective thing that Democrats could have done was to hold McConnell and Ryan accountable to Donald Trump.
Yep.
In other words, to say every time Donald Trump says something crazy, you immediately go, I want to hear Mitch McConnell denounce this. I want to hear Paul Ryan do this. And they did not do that. It was as if those two guys were on vacation and they were just gone. And the reason is Chuck Schumer both famously said, for every blue collar guy we lose in Pittsburgh, we're going to get two white collars in the suburbs. And that was their way. The reason why they left, they didn't attack Ryan and McConnell, is because they wanted those sort of like drifting Republican voters. They thought they were gettable. And it turns out they weren't. I mean, Republicans want their tax cuts. They want their tax cuts, and they're willing to put up with whatever it is that they're going to put up. But they wanted that constituency. Chuck Schumer also famously said he was going to do a deal. He says, I've got Ryan, I've got Schumer. He referred to himself in third person. And I've got Clinton, and we're going to do a deal for infrastructure, and we're going to repatriate all of these foreign held profits by American companies. George Bush did the same thing, did a discount tax rate. They came back, they cut jobs. That was the 2005 American Jobs Act. Schumer wanted to maintain, Clinton wanted to maintain a certain constituency because it's going to give them latitude when they govern. And so a guy like Carville, he doesn't want the Democrats to sign on to anything because essentially he wants to make sure that we don't have the same problem that we had under Biden, which was increased antitrust, increased power of labor, because fundamentally those cut into corporate power. Were it not for Gaza, and, had he kept his pledge to serve one term, Joe Biden would have been the best president of my lifetime.
He was on a roll, Sam. He was on a roll. He evolved on the crime bill. He evolved on the economic policy. It was the
He
progressive.
didn't evolve. Listen, the bottom line is Joe Biden knew where the middle of the Democratic Party was, and it was because of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren representing probably more than half of the Democratic Party, frankly, at that point. He knew he needed them to be on board for anything to happen in an administration. That's why labor was strong, because Bernie got to put all his people in there, and antitrust was strong Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the FTC, the antitrust and DOJ, was because Warren was basically, they were given those portfolios. And that's when the best stuff happened under the Biden
Yep.
administration. And Carville doesn't like Carville types. I think Carville actually, if I remember now correctly, Carville I think is has a consultancy with Palantir.
Of course.
I think that's the case. People can double check me on that. But
They
this
want
is
the system as is, Sam.
without a doubt.
You saw, and now you're seeing them all. They're so threatened by the emergence of the woke, the emergence of progressives, the emergence of an anti 1%, anti oligarchy message. I don't know if you saw that. I think that piece came out in the New York Times. Third Way did that piece, the interview in the New York Times. The abundance folks, the Ezra. I call them what not the Ezra. Who's the other guy? Ezra Iglesias, pundit class.
Uh-huh.
Uh, these are the folks who my fear, Sam, is they would rather burn it all down than actually embrace reform. They would actually burn it all down than actually have their nest just temporarily disrupted, right? People like the Carvilles and others. They want the money from the oracles. They want the money from the Palantirs. At the end of the day, you've been in this game a long time. I've been in this game a long time. I always tell people it's a big club. They go to the same churches, same golf clubs, same synagogues. At MSNBC and CNN, they're all buddy buddies. They go to the same parties. They sleep with each other. They marry each other. They cheat on each other. It's kind of like the same big old club. And in what they really fear is a type of transformation, a transformational politics, which is the mood in the air, which would require taxing the rich, which would require, I don't know, abolishing ICE, which would require, saying F you APAC, which would require no new wars, which would require not taking money from, I don't know, AI and crypto. But they don't want to do that, Sam. So instead, for the past 10 years, what they'll do is try to sabotage the left, progressives. They use the word as a pejorative against the rest of us, even though all the polls, Perry Bacon, I think it was yesterday, New Republic, showed that as much as these groups keep talking about, the Democratic base is actually moderate and we should go centrist, all the polls show that all the liberal and progressive policies, Sam, are the ones that motivate people. And you can even win over these mythical whites, these centrists, these Rust Belt whites that Chuck Schumer loved. You don't win them over through Liz Cheney. You win them over by promising accountability and affordability. What did I
Yeah.
miss?
Nothing. And I think there was those focus groups in the Times the other day where they said they had taken a wide range of voters and said the question was something to the effect of like, would you prefer a moderate or progressive? And 100%, it's a
All
focus group.
13 of them.
All 13 said the progressive. I mean, yeah, I think that's true. And there is Kevin Drum, the late Kevin Drum, who was at Washington Monthly and had a blog back in the day. He had this concept. Maybe he had borrowed it from somewhere else, but I remember it from him. The iron law of institutions, which is that people who run institutions would rather have less power for the institution as long as they can maintain their power within it.
Mm,
And, I think that's an impulse of a lot of
mm.
people. People who go into politics, not all people, but a lot of people go into politics. They go in because they want power. And if they have the power, they want to maintain the power. And if there's a 90% chance that it's gonna hurt the institution for you to maintain power, but a 10% chance that you can maintain power and help the institution, they're gonna bet on the 10%
That's right.
because their own interests, self-interest help. I mean, look, this has been one of the biggest problems that Democrats have had in terms of campaigns. It's why, like, you can see Mamdani won and Cuomo didn't. It was a perfect illustration of like the 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 fight between the Democratic Party. And now, granted, it is in New York, but it all holds. I mean, Andrew Cuomo, Mario Cuomo was considered a god here. Andrew Cuomo was governor for 2 terms. I mean, this is what you can see in their campaigning styles. It tells a big story. Democratic consultants, and I've had conversations with Republican consultants who have told me these things actually, that when they sit down with their Democratic counterparts, they're just sort of shocked about what the way that Democrats consultants work versus Republicans. And I'm not saying the Republicans are perfect on this, but Democratic consultants, they will always defer to things like TV and media buys, because they get 15% of every dollar that's spent on it.
Interesting.
They get a cut, and it's existed for a long time. And so, I mean, that's why for years and years we would hear Texas is going blue, Texas is going blue. And part of that was because there were a lot of consultants who had a lot of money to be made in these massive media markets in Texas. And if money comes in, it's going to get spent on ads and this and that. A candidate like Mamdani, who was able to get matching funds, and so he could pay for infrastructure, but there is no, for a consultant to say, what you really need is a ground game. You need to build volunteers. You need to do this. They they have less of an incentive, financial incentive, frankly, to do
There you
this. I
go.
mean, and and that's just the reality of it. And so, um, the nature of the campaign is also very indicative of the world in which the candidate sort of swims. And so one that is like more needs bigger dollar donors, because their consultants are also from that same sort of like corporate mentality. They're like, you need big dollar donors because you need more money because you need to buy television ads. And the more money that goes into television ads, the more money goes into those consultant pockets. If it's you need money to pay for people to organize volunteers, they don't get a veg of that. And so, it's what's that old saying? The hardest thing to do is to convince a man that they're wrong about something they're already getting paid for, or something to that effect.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it. It all goes back to the money. And that explains the PACs, the funding. Well, not just the money, folks, but the ideology also, but the money, right? If you go to where the base is, if you go grassroots, if you go against the oligarchy, if you want change, if you want to tax the rich, that fundamentally hurts the bottom line of the incestuous remoras that are now hanging on to the carcass of the DNC. And so one of those, in my opinion, the carcass is a Chuck Schumer. I also think it's Hakeem Jeffries. The problem, though, is they're literally dragging down not just the party, but when we need an opposition party, Sam. Because look, Sam, to be honest, I have no fidelity to any politician. I don't adulate them. I never have. I never will. To me, they're all tools.
Yep.
Clearly, it's obvious to anyone. I do not vote Republican because I see him as a existential threat to our democracy. I think they're fascist. I used the F word before most people did. I said they were right-wing authoritarian, racist, and I said they would go Nazi by 2025. Latest polls show, folks, a majority of Republican youth are Holocaust deniers. You saw the latest leak, Sam, which is all the leaks are the same when it comes to
Yep.
their social media text. They love Hitler. They want to throw us all into gas ovens. They imagine the most disgusting, violent type of torture against us. They love the N word. Very racist, very misogynist, very anti Semitic. So you need a bold opposition party. And I was told, Sam, last year, I remember seeing the Democrats, we need a liberal Joe Rogan. We need these alpha bros. So who'd they have after Donald Trump's State of the Union? Centrist Alyssa Slotkin. The only thing I remember from her speech was she praised Reagan. All right. Then you fast forward. We need more centrists. We need more moderates. Waj, we need centrists. Waj, we got to have a centrist. You need centrists to win. And sure, the centrists will vote for APAC, and the centrists will vote for the SAVE Act, and the centrists will vote for funding DHS even after they killed Renee Nicole Good. And the centrists might be against abortion rights. But Waj, we need centrists.
Yeah.
And I say, Sam, now, I don't think we need a quote unquote centrist or moderate. I think the difference between a moderate and a centrist and a Republican is what? Maybe just the D versus the R. We don't need Vichy Democrats. Everything that I've seen so far shows me that if you actually ran a populist, every place, but if you ran like a populist candidate, you can win over these mythical whites that Schumer and Harris wanted, right? The Liz Cheney whites. And these centrists, if they're voting for the SAVE Act, Henry Cuellar, if they're voting to fund ICE after ICE killed Renee Nicole Good, Henry Cuellar, if they're voting to give Donald Trump no restraints on his war, Henry Cuellar, and then the next day after that vote just happened last week, what did Donald Trump say? Cuba's next. Sam, why do we need centrists? Because I'm sure you've heard this from Democrats as well. Waj, no, we need them. I'd rather have a centrist than a Republican. There's no other way for us to pick up some of these seats, and we need a mansion and a cinema. Why, Sam?
Look, the theory is that the centrist is going to win in these areas, and I'm sorry, the theory just is not playing out. This is what we were told about. I think her name was Sarah Gideon in the race against Susan Collins, and this is what we were told about Janet Mills. Um, from the Democratic establishment. Look, there are things that I may not agree with a guy like Graham Plattner. Like, he is much more gun centric than I might be. He lives in Maine. It's a local issue there. And but the fact of the matter is that his appeal to labor, his appeal to working class politics, his notion that we have an oligarchy and we have too much corporate power, that appeals across the board. If you look at the latest polling, he's pulling now from Republicans and centrists and independents in the primary.
Yeah, it's
He's
wild.
doing this in the primary. Like he's he
Even
is
with the
running
scandals, Sam.
both
Even with
to the
the
left of Mills and attracting Republicans and independents. And make no mistake, I hope people know. I mean, like, I grew up in Massachusetts. I know what Maine is like. It's like Paul LePage was their governor. That dude had sovereign citizens come in and tell him that he can assassinate the members of the Maine Senate if they don't agree with him. And he had to have his lawyers intercede to say, like, Paul, you can't do that. These
wow.
people are crazy. Like, and he was governor. He may end up being one of the Congress people from Maine. So, you know, it's happened in New York. It's going to happen in Maine. I think there's a decent chance, like one of the sleeper races in Nebraska, Dan Osborne, he is not a Democrat because, again, you mentioned earlier, the Democratic brand is a disaster. John Tester from Montana said, like, I wouldn't encourage anybody to run as a Democrat anymore because the Democratic brand is just horrible. But you can run on politics that a Democrat, like an FDR Democrat had, and you could do well. There's two sort of like dimensions to this. One is there is a set of politics in the Democratic Party, people who entered into politics and learned the lesson of McGovern and came into politics around the time that Bill Clinton did, which is anachronistic now. Those politics don't exist. The idea of triangulation and the
Yep.
idea that
Old
Democrats
school
need to move
Clinton
to the
stuff.
right, they don't understand the partisan nature of politics. Now, I will say, like, there are Democrats who ideologically I don't necessarily agree with, but from a partisan standpoint, they understand that they're fighting Republicans and they've got to fight Republicans. Like Jasmine Crockett, like she has a lot of politics that I don't, like material politics that I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to. I'm not saying that Talarico is significantly better, um, but she knew how to do partisan politics. She knew how to do partisan politics. Now she didn't have much of a ground game. I think in Texas, from what I understand, she came in late, et cetera, all those other issues. But or even you know, uh, there are others that escape me at the moment that understand partisan politics. Then there's another filter where people are beginning to understand the material concerns of Americans and to understand, like, this is not going away. We have structural problems in this country. We have such incredible wealth inequality that, frankly, taxation alone is not going to take care of it. I mean, I think, like, what Bernie Sanders did was to come out with this wealth tax as a way of, in many respects, it's like signing on to single payer healthcare. A lot of Democrats have now adopted that because it's the most obvious thing to do, and we've seen the deficiencies in the Affordable Care Act, and they come mostly in terms of like private insurance providing insurance. We don't need private insurance. What Bernie wants to do is create a wealth tax as a litmus test for candidates, and because it gives you a good sense of like, are they willing to um, say no to the crypto money? Are they willing to say no to people who have 100 million, 200 million, $500 million or more, for that matter? But we also need like structural things that make it impossible to accumulate that kind of wealth
That's right.
on the front end. So it's not just a question of taxation. And, there's a smaller subset of Democratic politicians who understand those sets of policies. But they need to be able to work with partisan Democrats who understand that the Republicans are bad. I mean, the biggest problem that everything went south for Joe Biden following the passage of the American Rescue Act. Do you remember what Republicans were talking about? The largest bill ever passed in American history, the American Rescue Act, it cut child poverty in half over the course of the next 18 months. Child poverty was cut in half in this country. The greatest anti-poverty bill that we've ever seen. It kept millions of people on their health insurance. It wasn't done in the most efficient way because Nancy Pelosi did not want expand Medicare, so that we paid for Cobra, which was a completely inefficient way to do it. But nevertheless, so you had all these great things that came from the American Rescue Act. Do you remember what Republicans were saying following it?
What do they
They
say?
were completely enraged that there were two Dr. Seuss books that went out of print.
Correct.
That was the only thing they were talking about. And so Joe Biden, and at this point, people forget this, Joe Manchin, Bernie Sanders was saying, we got to do Build Back Better, and it's going to be $4 or $5 trillion. And Joe Manchin goes, I think we should do $6 trillion, because Joe Manchin's a fucking idiot, and he didn't. He was just going with the flow. When Joe Biden then said, "Whoa, we got to slow down. We're going to let the Republicans make a proposal because I want to bring the Republicans in," because he thought the fever had broken. And that dicking around cost 2 months. And then he let Kristen Sinema and Rob Portman come in to make their proposal, which ultimately is what we got. It got the bills got split apart. But during that time, people might remember this too. I think it was The Intercept came out with audio of Joe Manchin and a phone call that he was having with donors who were basically like, no, we're not going to do this Build Back. And so Joe Manchin then
Comes back.
went from a guy who said it should be more, we should be paying, we should have a bigger bill than Bernie Sanders, went to the guy who, along with Kristen Sinema, killed the bill because Joe Biden, I mean, that bill should have been voted on in September of 2021.
They had all the momentum, and it was
Had all the momentum, but they hit the brakes. In the most cynical way, it would be that because Joe Biden knew that the Republicans would kill it. I actually think it was just like a reflexive response to sort of like the politics he grew up with on some level, and said, the American public wants to see us working together. And the American
bipartisan.
Public about that. The American public wants stuff to be delivered to them, and they don't care. They're not worried about the process. You give me single payer health care, I don't give a shit if it gets every single Republican vote or no Republican votes. If you give me paid leave, you give me parental leave, you give me sick days, you give me support for, in nursing homes when I get older. I mean, I don't care if every Republican votes again for it or everybody Republican votes against it. I want the material benefits. And I'm going to look at it and go like, this is great that I have, a $20 copay whenever I have a doctor, and that's it. And that's my only expense. But it doesn't feel good because Lindsey Graham voted against it, and I can't enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes to show, and you see this happening with Schumer, where he loves at backroom deals. He's more comfortable bear hugging Marco Rubio and Netanyahu than he is Mamdani. They want to get back into the room, slap each other back on the backs, have the brandy, and do business as usual. But these people aren't built for this moment, Sam. They're not made for
No.
this fight. They're not made for it because it's not. We're dealing with Nazis, folks. These people love Nazis. Jake Lang is a Nazi. Andy Ogles, who said that America should get rid of Muslims yesterday, you know who he defended? Nazi Jake Lang, who was a January 6th insurrectionist, who was pardoned by Trump and then had a protest at Mamdani's house, and now that's becoming a site of violence. Apparently, I don't know if you saw today
Yeah.
that they found another bomb
Oh,
around that Gracie mansion. They're sniffing. They have bomb sniffers there. So they want to like kill. They literally want to kill the rest of us. And meanwhile, we have these antiquated fossils who are more beholden to the old way of things, which feathers their nest. But Sam, fantastic conversation. Thank you, sir, for joining us in this live. Don't listen to me. Listen to Sam. Oh, actually, I want to ask you this one quick question before I go, because I haven't shared this with you. I'm kind of developing a litmus test for Democrats moving forward. This is the floor, not the ceiling, meaning this does not encompass everything I want them to do. But I think this is a litmus test, meaning if you're a Democrat who doesn't support this, I don't see how you can lead the party and where the people are. But I want your thoughts on this. One of them is you have to be mentioning affordability and accountability, both with specifics. If you're not giving specifics on affordability and accountability, you're not the fighter for this moment. Number two, no specific order, you have to embrace abolishing ICE. I think anything less, the people aren't with you. Number three, I don't have any faith in you saying that you'll defend American democracy against fascists if you still support fascists and genocide abroad, specifically when it comes to Netanyahu. Number four, um, you have to be in some way, shape, or form against the oligarchy. Baseline, you have to support taxing the rich, the 1%. And then number five, I'm going to be paying attention to who you throw under the bus. And this is where it gets to Newsom. If you can throw transgender kids under the bus, and then casually throw undocumented immigrants under the bus, I know you're going to throw me under the bus. So you can't really throw any of us under the bus. It has to be affordability for all. Those are my five. That's my litmus test, Sam. What's your thoughts on that?
no, I think that's great. And I would say, I can't remember which one it was, but in terms of taxing the rich, the Bernie wealth tax is a great sort of litmus test for this because everybody can say like, oh, the rich need to pay their fair share. This is something that like Bill Clinton would espouse and whatnot. But a wealth tax means that you are not afraid to basically say it is fundamentally unhealthy for a society and unsustainable for society to have this type of wealth disparity. And it's just a fact. I mean, it is unsustainable to have this type of wealth disparity because it leads to a political power disparity, and we see it every single day. And so I would add that, and I would just add one more thing to the Gavin Newsom assessment. He also um, recently, and I think maybe it was in that same Pod Save interview, said like, I've been guilty too of like getting culturally out of touch with America and going too far and not being normal, I think is
You
what he
said
said.
norm. That was a
Normal.
different.
Totally.
I think that was a CNN interview. That was the week before the pod.
Okay. I think you're right. It was
We need to be
CNN.
culturally normal now.
Okay. Do you remember what he said as an example of what he felt was not normal? That he was too far out in front of?
What was it? Pronouns?
It was marriage equality.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
That was his way of proving that he was normal. And I'm sorry, like, first off, aside from just as a first order issue, like you cannot throw human rights under the bus. Okay? Whether it's trans rights, whether it's marriage equality rights, whether it's being against Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, or against Black lives, believing Black Lives Matter. You can't be, as a first order, you can't be against human rights. But as a political matter, the fact of the matter is that, like the vast majority of people, this is not abnormal. This stuff is not abnormal. You're spending too much time on a podcast with Charlie Kirk, or who, incidentally, I will say, 10 years ago was traveling around TPUSA with a gay Republican until the Groypers came and started attacking him for it. And Charlie Kirk moved to the right as it went on. And so, and became more revanchist and fascistic and etc. The fact of the matter is that 50% plus one, I don't know how far up, but it's definitely above 50%. I think it's perfectly normal to just let people live their lives. And that's it. And so that he has this mentality. The way I project that I'm normal is to throw people, marginalized people, or people who have traditionally hadn't had the same rights, or who may be different from, you sitting in your white enclave, to throw them under the bus. I think is very, very problematic.
And folks, he's done that for the past year. And what I've been telling people, I'm from California. If he can so quickly throw transgender students under the bus, he will throw you under the bus.
Yeah.
He goes where the wind is blowing. He's not the person for the moment. But Nancy Pelosi has thrown her weight behind him, so apparently it's inevitable. I don't think so, Sam. Zoran Mamdani came out of nowhere, and you and me are old enough when we didn't have gray hair that Hillary Clinton was a done deal in 2008 until this guy called Barack Obama said, let me throw my hand in the ring.
Yep.
And the mood of the country was, we want something different. And he won primary after primary after primary. Then it became brutal. And folks, people forget the Democratic establishment really tried to go after Obama. Remember when they said, do you think he's Muslim? I'll take him at his word. It wasn't just McConnell who said that. It was also Hillary Clinton. I keep the receipts. So change is hard. They don't want to change. They will do anything and everything to keep the party from changing and meaning its base, which is why right now, Sam, it's primary. We got 7 to 8 months. We have to be loud. They are listening. They are shifting. The reason why Gavin said that in front of Pod Saves America, that Israel might be an apartheid state, because he sees where the wind is blowing. We have to be loud. We have to put the fear of God in them. I agree with you with Chuck Schumer. He realizes he's done. So he's going to use the last vestiges of his power to probably promote whatever he wants, but he has no future. But it doesn't mean that we have to be hijacked by these centrists and these corporate Dems. We deserve better. Sam, fantastic work as always. Great work at Majority Report. Please shamelessly promote yourself.
Majority Report. That's it.
When? Where?
It's on YouTube. For the most part, you can get it on Twitch too. We go live every day at noon for about 2.5 hours. But the first hour or so, generally I go over, is available as a podcast, and we put clips up on YouTube as well. Just Google Majority Report, you'll find it. But Waj, I really appreciate it. A lot of fun.
No, and also congrats on your kid. Bar mitzvah time is happening, so Sam is officially becoming a rabbi, a rabbi Seder. The hair will grow. That's what happens. Jews are like Muslims, become human chia pets after the age of 40. Just hair comes out everywhere.
I've seen those eyebrows that Ben Shapiro has.
Oh, those eyebrows. And then also tell Emma I have her email, but I think it goes to spam. Why does she hate me? Why does she ignore me? We would love to get her on.
I will ask her that question.
Yeah, why do you hate
on air? I'll ask
her on there. Why do you hate Wajahat Ali? And I would love to hear the answer. Thanks, Sam. I spent longer than I thought I would, but a fantastic conversation. For those who are listening, 1,300 people. This is Sam Seder, co-host of the Majority Report. Fantastic. Comes on every day on YouTube, about 2.5 hours, daily fresh content, and they do bite-sized clips as well. Check it out on YouTube. Subscribe to him. I think he created a Substack account just for me. That's so kind of you, sir. So go subscribe to YouTube. Thank you all for watching. It's The Left Hook. Everything is free. I'm a terrible capitalist. If you can, become a paid subscriber. If not, just subscribe. Take care of yourselves, folks. Be kind, be informed, and please, oh, please don't be a fascist or a corporate Democrat. Take care, Sam.
Thanks, Waj.